Hello, my friends. Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works Workshop. It's Friday. That's what we used to say when we worked. Not that I don't work, just a different kind of work, that's all. And I think we got a good program for you this morning. Made a bunch of changes on a whole bunch of things that are behind the scenes that you really can't see. I'll just briefly give you an outline. Thank you, Toby. It looks like Toby's already done a super chat there. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I've added a light up here, and I think that I looked at it before and after, and I like it better with the extra light. I'm going to turn it off here in a minute and let you see that thing. And there it is. It popped up on the screen too, so that's kind of cool that pops up there. I set that up a long time ago, but I wasn't sure I could get that to work, and now I know it works. And in addition to the extra light ring that I have up here behind the camera, I have a microphone here, closer. I mean, it's always been here, but it was set over another foot away, so I'm hoping that will help on the sound too. I put an arm on it where I could get it up here, but just out of camera range. But that does put it much closer to me than what we've had in the past. And I think that's about it for right now. I also put the microphone on a anti-shock pad in addition to putting it on the arm. So I'm hoping all these things are just little subtle things that will help in the long run. I have a outline here this morning to follow, and I'll just bring you up to date on a few things, and then we'll get into the whole idea of the video. By the way, if you'd like to post a question or a comment that you want me to read, be sure to put question marks in front of it. Just put 2 or 3 question marks in the front of your question or your comment, and then I'll try to read it. I may have to scroll back up and find it a little bit later, but we'll do that. Trinian, my grandson, he's 8 years old. He's been here this week, and as you know already, if you watched the daily vlogs, we went fishing down at the river, down here at the Little Piney. Did pretty good, we didn't stay a long time, and I think I caught 6 or something, and so we caught a few fish in that time. So, he's been fishing in our little pond here all week by himself quite a bit. So yesterday I thought, well, I'll give him a little treat. I took off yesterday afternoon and I took him down to another river. Actually it's where Melissa, if you remember, Melissa was my office manager for over a year there, a year and a half or so. Did an excellent job while she worked here. She quit to start her own campground and, kind of like a canoe thing and a campground right there on the river. So I took Trinian down there to, see what we could do at the Big Piney. So we have the Little Piney here by our farm, and then the Big Piney is just a few miles away. Well, it is a beautiful river, and it would be a beautiful river for floating. So if anybody, wants to do that, get a hold of Liberty Life Campground, and you can look that up or Google it. It's easy to find, Liberty Life Campground in St. Robert, Missouri. And it's right on the Big Piney River, and it's a great floating river. It wasn't, I'll be honest, I'm not going to pull any, me, I try to tell everything the way I see it. It wasn't great for wading, and the reason it wasn't, at least where we put in there, was that it was round boulders and rocks. It was, softball size to basketball size rocks, pretty much covering the whole bottom of the river. So that was really hard to wade in. It would be beautiful. We couldn't get over to where we thought the best fishing spots would be, which were where the logs were laying on the other side of the river and things like that. So, and it's a swift river, so we couldn't really get our fishing done very well there. We tried for about an hour and really didn't have too much luck. We got a few bites and things, but we know it would be good fishing if we could have just got to the good spots. But man, an old guy like me with that fast-moving water and those big round rocks, that's really hard to walk on. But it is a beautiful river. It's just absolutely beautiful. You would love to float it. So you ought to get a hold of Liberty Life Campground and set that up for sometime in the future, and then stop by the shop here too and have a shop tour. Okay, moving right along. I wanted to bring you up to date on my video encyclopedia idea. And I'm calling it video encyclopedia now rather than just tips and tricks, because basically it's going to be all encompassing. It's going to be tips and tricks and, setups and even how to pick out an instrument like we're going to talk about today, how to pick out an instrument and get the best bang for your buck. So pretty much everything you can imagine is going to be included in my video library if I ever get it done. And I'm telling you what, it's a daunting task to even think about. I highlighted, you might be able to see the yellow there. I've just highlighted that. I'm just going to read off the yellow topics, and I would like to have you tell me if you think I need other topics. Okay, so these are just the real broad topics, okay? And as you can see, like under one broad topic, there's a lot of stuff. So I'm only reading the broad topic. So wood selection is the first topic I have on the paper. Doesn't mean these would be in this order in the encyclopedia. And in fact, I'm hoping to make the encyclopedia where you can find anything you want by just doing a search. Construction ideas is my second broad topic, and that would mean like building an instrument and all the different ideas behind that and how you might go about it. So there's all kinds of things that could be included in that. Tool making and tool usage is another broad topic. Finishing is another broad topic. Repairing, recommended products. Setup, of course, which is the one we've already talked about in the vlog, which is probably going to be the first thing I tackle because it's so important. Storing and maintaining. So those are the big broad topics. If you can think of other broad topics that you think I should include in my outline, be sure to mention that, and hopefully you'll put it in your comments here, and we'll look at that. Let's see, moving on just a little bit from that right now, and I'll come back to the comments here in a minute and read through that in case anyone has any ideas, and we'll talk about those. But just moving on to another idea or two here, or just another subject. Paul from St. Louis sent me this pin puller. I just wanted to talk about it briefly. It's called a Music Nomad. It works really well. I've been using it quite a bit here in the shop, and I would say if you're looking for something to pull pins, this is a good option. I don't think it's a bad option at all. Do I think it's the best option for a professional like myself? I'll be honest and say no, I don't think it is, because it's a little bit slow compared to the other methods that I use. But in terms of doing a good job, and if you wanted something to put in your guitar case, and it's kind of got a rubber grip to it and everything, I think this is an excellent choice. So, I mean, I'm just mentioning it to you that I think it does a good job. It's called the Music Nomad. That's all I've got on here. There's nothing else on here to tell you. Why don't I think it's the best for a professional? Well, I'll be honest. This plastic can separate on some pins that are really hard to get out. You might have to do it 2 or 3 times and try it a couple times to get it out, and it'll pull through there. You have to understand, I see everything. Your average musician on their average guitar, this is going to work wonderful. No problem at all. But for the professional, this is your tool of choice, because this will take out a pin no matter what. And I know some of you are cringing. You're going, oh my gosh, you'll cut the pin in half. You'll make a mess, or you'll make a scar. I've never done that. Never. Not once, ever. It works perfectly, and it works great, and it works every time. Now, some of you keep these in your guitar case already, and of course, some of you probably already use these for pulling pins. But for a professional, this is probably the better way to go. But for something in your guitar case and for the average musician, this thing works really well and works very good. So I'm just pointing that out. I sometimes I think. Now I'm not picking on Paul here because Paul sent me a lot of stuff. He's really a nice fellow. But what I'm pointing out is that some things that are seen in videos, people think, oh, he doesn't have a better way to do that, but honestly, I do most things for a reason. And I use these is because it works under any circumstance on every single time I want the pen to come out, it comes out. And the other thing that you can do with this is you stick it on the pen and you can rock it like that and it'll lift the pen right out. So anyway, my point is a professional will probably be using a tool like this. But this is an excellent pen puller. So I just wanted to give you that little review there in case you were looking for a pen puller. And by the way, your results will vary on this unless you've learned the technique. It does take a certain touch, a certain technique to use this effectively and without creating a problem. Okay, so having said that, thought I'd give you a few stats on the channel. We're kind of holding our own. It's nothing impressive. I've got a total of 964 videos out there right now, and that's according to YouTube, not according to me. That's their number they give me. And last month, or in the last 28 days, we had 353,000 views, which is pretty good. It's kind of in my average. It's within the average. It's not even really a high average. It's just about average. And then we had 87,000 hours of view time, which is good. Again, not nearly up to my highs. But the negative of all this is that we only gained 306 new viewers, and that's only about half of our normal. So that's kind of sad. I wish we were getting a few more viewers. But anyway, that's the stats. Just wanted to give you that. And then in terms of finished instruments that I've been working on, you probably saw in my vlog that I did finish the 2-point Alvarez. That customer is going to come and pick it up on a Tuesday, and I think it's the second Tuesday of August. And he's going to, come here to the shop, and I think he's bringing a friend for a shop tour. And then we're all going to go over to the barbecue pit that evening and play some music. So I think they wanted to see our jam over there. So that's going to be fun. I also finished a fiddle and a bow. It's mostly a setup job. There was a number of things to repair on the fiddle, but it was mostly a setup job. So I did get the fiddle done, and I got him a new case and everything too. So you'll be seeing that video very shortly also. I know you've already been seeing some of the videos on the Alvarez, but the final video will be coming out before long on that. I left a link to the acoustic shop in the description of this video. So if you want to go back and look at my visit down to the acoustic shop last week, and we were playing the world's finest mandolin ever built by a human, and just having a good time with those guys. They're good guys to hang out with. So I left a link to that video in this description as well, so you could still check that out if you want to. All right, I think that's about it. Before we get into how to choose a really fine instrument, let me go back and look at the question marks, because I know there are a bunch. I've already seen a bunch of them scroll up here. And let's see here. I scrolled way up. Now I'm scrolling back down. Alan Dust. For guitar building, what is your fret wire size of choice, and how do you modify your fret crowning tool? Well, my fret wire of choice for guitars is medium. See, I'm of the opinion, and this goes pretty much with everything with me. I'm always kind of the middle of the road guy. I'm not going to go to one extreme or the other on almost anything, whether it's fret wire size or it doesn't really matter what it is. Like anything. If there's options at this extreme and this extreme, I'm going to be somewhere in the middle. I typically don't go to the extremes. So on fret wire size, on mandolins and on guitars and pretty much on everything, banjos and everything, I always choose the medium size or what they call their standard size or whatever. You know, some people want to alter that, and that's fine. If in your personal preference, your personal taste, you want the bigger frets, that's fine. If you tell me that's what you want, that's what I'll put in. But for me, if I've got the choice, I'm always going to go with the medium or the standard or something like that. And in terms of modifying my fret crowning tool, I didn't do a huge modification to it, but especially on the large fret recrowning blade, and I think I have it right here. This, if you know what these are, and I'm trying to get up here, let the camera try to focus on that. You know, if you can see how shiny the edges are, I have took those over to my sander and I rolled them back like this. In other words, I rolled those edges back. I didn't get down in where the teeth of the file are, but I took the edges and rolled them back on my sander. Very difficult to do because it's hard to hold this, but I did do it. And I don't remember how I did it. I may have put it in the handle and then got over there and helped hold it that way. Probably did. I can't remember now. It's been a while. But anyway, I roll those edges off, and that helps you because when you get down, when the frets are low and everything, and some of the frets have been filed a couple of times, well, these edges can actually scrape your fretboard. So that's why I roll them back, and then you don't have that problem. You can get down much lower. I don't do it to every one of my recrowning inserts. I only did it to the big one. But that's all I did. The next question or comment. When you oil a fretboard, you always make a point of saying you have to rub it off well. Why is that? Wouldn't leaving it saturated let it soak in better? Well, especially with linseed oil, it will get kind of gummy, and so it's great. It's a great, thing to do to your bare wood. So I'm not knocking that part. It's good to put the boiled linseed oil on, but you want to wipe it off really well, and you want to come back in about 5 or 6 minutes because it'll start seeping out of the pores again, and you want to wipe it out again. And what you're saying about the saturation isn't an issue. It really isn't an issue. The wood itself, especially if it's bare and especially if it's dry, it's going to soak up pretty quickly what it needs. And then you want to be sure to get it off, otherwise you'll have a gummy residue, and you don't want that. That's the reason, and that's all there is to it. And I understand your point about soaking in better. On certain kinds of materials, on certain kinds of things, that would probably be true, but in this case, you don't really want to do that unless you want a gummy residue left on top, and I'm sure you don't. John Mole, do you use a scroll strengthening as Seminoff suggests? Yeah, I do on a lot of them. You're talking about the little scroll up on the peg head and where you do that. I've done that a lot. I can't say I remembered to do it on every instrument. And that's all that it amounts to, is whether I remembered to do it or not. I sometimes get in a hurry and, I put the cart before the horse, and then I put and it's not like it's a bad thing if you forget it. It's kind of standard not to have it there, but it's also a good thing if you do put it there. And so I do put it on most of them at least the ones I remember. Did I put it on the world's finest mandolin ever built? I'm not sure if I did or not. I think I did, but I'm not sure. You probably know better than me if you saw the videos. I just don't recall. You guys would think that I would surely remember stuff like that. You just don't know how much water flows under the bridge, and it all runs together after a while. It's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing how much there is to try to remember, and especially sorting them out. And I still think the funniest comment that ever walks through the door, now I realize they don't realize this, the person saying it, But from my perspective, it's like the funniest comment in the world is a guy will bring a fiddle in here and he'll say, you remember I brought you a fiddle, 7 years ago. And he says, you did such and so to it. I went, yes, sorry. There's hundreds and hundreds of instruments have been through here. So, it's like, it's impossible to remember. But anyway, okay, next question, if I find something here. Paul Akers, if a bridge plate is huge and super thin, but not loose, would it be okay to add another bridge plate over it? Yeah, I have actually done that, Paul, only under, certain specific circumstances, kind of like you're pointing out. If it's exceptionally thin and you've got a bulge that you're trying to remove, you could put another bridge plate on it. And as long as you make sure it's good quality wood and all that, you won't have any problem and you won't regret it. It'll work for you and do the job. If you can't get them out especially, you could do that. And they're not easy to get out. So, it might be a real good option under certain circumstances. James Cassidy, Jerry, off topic, but any plans to go to Scotland now that the COVID thing is over? Probably not, James, at least not right away, although we did have an inquiry about that again from... trying to think of his name now, Jason over in Scotland. He was kind of the organizer or the thing behind that, the push behind it, and he did ask me about it. And right now I don't have any plans because I got to be honest with you, it wasn't the COVID as much as it was the hassle factor. Oh my gosh, if I had somebody that would take on the whole hassle, wow, my goodness. Toby, you're outdoing yourself there. I guess that's a real thing going on there. It sure looks like it. Thank you, Toby. I really appreciate it. Anyway, so right now we don't have any plans to go back to Scotland, but it would be cool. I would love to go there myself. As I've mentioned before, my mother's maiden name is Sconce, which they claim in the family, and this is all I know. I haven't researched it, but they claim that Sconce is Scotch-Irish, kind of a combination there of the two. So I don't really know if that's true or not. But anyway, we do have ties there from that perspective. Let's see, Zappo and PNT Paul again says, Jerry, I understand completely. Okay, all right. And he also says he's used the diagonal cutters and they work great also. So in other words, he was talking about my comments about this. I mean, I'm not trying to put it down. I really do think it's a good pin puller, probably one of the best I've ever used. But it's still not quite up to a professional's demands, And when you're doing the kind of demanding thing I'm doing, minutes count, seconds count. Because I'm billing you at $100 an hour. And do you want me to fumble around or do you want me to get the job done? And that's just the bottom line, And so it benefits you if I get the job done much faster. Okay, let's see. DD says, when you test intonation, do you ever test at other frets than just the 12th? I've built a couple of guitars and have had intonation perfect at 12, but the terrible close to the nut due to nut height. Well, I don't know if it works at the 12th. My perspective is, and the instrument is set up correctly, which I do while I'm doing all of that, as I set it up correctly, and the nut isn't high. It pretty much works everywhere. Does it work perfectly everywhere? No, there's no such thing as perfect, and I mean like to the perfect scent. There's no such thing as perfect intonation in that regard. But about as good as you can do and reasonably expect to get is if you get it, if you got the instrument set up well and the intonation is near perfect as you can get it at the 12th fret, that's about as good as you're going to do. I am not a believer at all in the changing the nut to change your intonation. I don't believe in that at all, and I don't think it's the way to do it. I think it's an absolute compromise every time you do it. And I can prove it to you. If you come here and show me that you can do it that way, I can show you why it doesn't work. So I don't believe in the intonation by altering the nut at all. So just want to let you know that. Okay, David Tharp. Hi, Jerry. Would you ever use ash for a bridge plate? Well, ash is a hard wood. And I'll be honest with you, David, I haven't had enough ash around here to test it. So I couldn't tell you. If it makes a good tone when you tap on it, comparatively to, say, rosewood, then yeah, I probably would. But if it makes a tone more like oak, which just goes thunk, and there's really no tone, if you can't hear that note, then I probably wouldn't. That's just the bottom line. So I can't really answer it definitively, but that's my best explanation I can give you. Gary Young says, just wanted to suggest that you consider offering the video repair lessons to your Patreon folks in lieu of selling them. Yeah, as a matter of fact, Gary, I'd already absolutely 100% planned to make them totally available to all my Patreon people. Well, I will say I'll have to have some restrictions on that. But the ones that have been with me a long time, the ones that have been putting in quite a bit of money, for sure, they're going to have access to it absolutely 100% free. And in fact, I'll just go on record right now, and if anybody that's been supporting me on Patreon for a while and you want my other kinds of training, you can have that for free too. So I really don't do enough with my Patreon people, and it's my own fault. I just feel like I'm already burning the candle at three ends. People talk about burning it at two ends or both ends. I'm burning it at three ends. I'm starting in the middle and burning it at both directions and from the ends. That's how much I'm burning the candle. I just can't keep up. It's the truth. I just can't keep up. Type A people, we always bite off way more than we can chew. That's just the way it is. And there's that old saying, when the Pope wants something done in a hurry, he always gives it to his busiest cardinal. Yeah, that's kind of the way I am. That's the way it was at work, too. At Bell, whenever they had the big mess or the big project, they always seemed to hand it off to me, even no matter how busy I was, because they knew I'd get after it. Anyway, Michael Newman says, hi, Jerry. I was wondering if I should always adjust the bridge saddle before adjusting the head nut. Well, you kind of do them a little bit at the same time to some degree. If you know your nut is really high, you're going to want to drop it down. If you know your saddle's really high, you're going to want to drop it down. You get them kind of sort of in the ballpark, and then you start tweaking it. And it really, I don't know you kind of want to watch your nut more than anything at the beginning, because you can get it too low, and you don't want to get it too low, because then you got to make a whole new nut, or you have to monkey with filling it in, and which I don't like to see. But so you got to be careful at the nut end, but you don't want either end crazy high when you start your intonation. You want to get them in the ballpark. And then you want to sneak up on both of them if you don't have the proper equipment to measure it accurately like I do. Like, for instance, on the saddle end, it's just almost black and white. I can set it to exactly where I want it because, we know that you're going to get half of whatever you do at the saddle, you're going to get half of that at the 12th fret. So if you take off 50 thousandths on the saddle, you're going to get 25 at the 12th fret. And it's pretty close, pretty accurate. So that end doesn't bother me as much as the nut end. The nut end's the one to be careful with, because if you get it just a fraction too low, you're too low and you're done. You got to start over. Yeah. Or there are ways around that too, by the way, other than filling it. And people don't always agree with it, but let me just show you, because it works just fine. How do I know? Because I've done it a million times. Some of you will say it's a hack job. It's not a hack job. It works perfectly. But let's say you did just get it just a fraction too low. And I'm not talking about you cut it, the 16th of an inch too low. That's going to be too much. But let's just say it's just barely buzzing. I mean, you can just barely hear it buzz. Well, then just take your flat file, work these areas right here, just work the area that's buzzing in, and just feather it out, and it'll be just fine. It'll be just fine. Just feather it out, and then you'll have to recrown it, of course. But, if you're just talking about the minor buzz at the first fret, and your nut is, you just by accidentally got it just a hair too low, well, then just feather it out, and you'll be fine. I've done it a million times. I know it works, and it doesn't create a problem. It's, I wouldn't tell you to do something if it didn't work. So there you go. I'm going to stop with the questions for the moment, and let's go ahead and get into how to choose a great instrument. This is, again, a lot of this is my experience, but a lot of it is an opinion also. So just keep that in mind. Okay, and I think this guitar right here is probably one of the best examples of how to choose a good instrument. It's good and bad. It's both good and bad. That instrument has a pretty darn good sound. It's an Ibanez Concord, it's Ibanez Concord. Some of the writing here is kind of rubbed off. It's hard to tell. It almost looks like Cordura or something, but it's Concord, I believe. And and the inside it says Concord. Well, all right. This, I'm going to tell you, is basically a plywood instrument. But yet it has a really good sound, and an especially good sound for a plywood instrument. And I know some of you just immediately object when I call it a plywood instrument. It should be called a laminate instrument. Well, laminate is like putting lipstick on a pig. And I don't mean that in such a negative way as it sounds. I mean, you're just dressing up the obvious. Plywood is plywood is plywood is plywood. You can call it a laminate if you want. A laminate, to me, is putting something on top of something else, like your laminate flooring or your laminate, countertop or something like that, where you put a substrate on top of, or you put something on top of a substrate, I guess is the better way to say it. But anyway, the point is, that's more of a laminate. This is plywood, in my opinion, because it's multiple plies of wood. All right. Now, having said that, that doesn't necessarily mean all plywood instruments are bad. In fact, I've heard several really fine sounding plywood guitars. And I have to tell you right now, this one sounds pretty darn good. It doesn't sound bad at all. But I guess my point of talking about this instrument is to show you that you can get a pretty decent sounding instrument, in whether it's a laminate type or plywood type, or whether it's solid wood. But I guess what I'm trying to say is I want you to be aware of what you're buying and what you're paying for. Just so you know. It's so that you don't get fooled. Because if you went into the music store and you thought, wow, that's a nice guitar, it's got nice top wood and everything, and you believe you're buying a solid wood guitar when you're actually buying a plywood guitar. And that's what this one is. It is a plywood guitar. It sounds great. It looks great. In fact, it looks really nice. In a blind test, if I were to play this and stuff, I don't know that I would know for sure that it was a plywood guitar. I kind of think I'd think it was a solid top guitar. That's how good it sounds. Comparatively, it sounds pretty good. So my point of all of that is to say, buyer beware, and so that you could understand what you're buying and how to figure out what you're buying if you don't know. Obviously, it would be helpful if you have a mirror, but you don't necessarily have to have a mirror to check the back and the sides. What you do is you look at the back, like say you pick a real specific spot, and especially a spot that you can kind of see a grain pattern. Now right here, you can see this kind of wide grain color and stripe through here, and it's book matched on this side. What you do is you look inside there, and you get the light on it, and you look and you go, that's not there. Maybe check another place or two. It's not there. That's plywood, because if it's real wood, it's going to go all the way through, or at least it's going to be lined up pretty darn well. I mean, even the thickness of a wood, even a real thin back like that, can change a little bit from one side to the other, but it's going to look pretty similar. Or like if you see a little tiny knot and you look and you go, that knot's not over here. You know, that's probably going to tell you that it's plywood. So that's for the back and the sides. You can see the back and the sides this way, and then you look at it like that. This one, the giveaway on this one is see how fine the grain is here? And I don't think you're going to be able to see it. I'll see if you can. But the grain on the inside is much wider on the sides. It's much wider. It's still, you know, fairly narrow grain, but it's much wider than this very fine grain. So that's the way you can tell if it's plywood. On the top here, often you can look right at the edge. But I'll tell you what, I was fooled on this one. I was really fooled on this one. I really was. I looked at the edge and I thought, man, this thing looks like it's got a real top in it, you know? So even with my close-up glasses, on a quick look at this, I would go, this is a real wood top. Because it looks like, most of the time you don't see this. This one looks like the grain is actually cutting through the fabric of the edge here. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it very much. But it looks like it's cutting through the edge here. It looks like the grain is doing that. And if you just look at this one quickly, you'd go, this is a real wood top. It's not. When you look at the grain here, you see how fine this grain is here? And I don't know, I doubt seriously that this is going to work with this camera and this setup, but I'm going to put this mirror in here and see if you can possibly, I'm hitting my microphone, sorry. I don't think you're going to be able to see it, but I don't know if I can even get it pointed in the right place. Probably not. But anyway, I can promise you that the grain on the inside here is much, much wider. It's like 2 or 3 times as wide as the grain is here. So that can't be solid wood when you see that. Now, once I actually knew that and I look at this closer, I can actually see the laminates in the edge. But boy, you got to look close on this one. So you could be fooled even when you think you know what you're looking at. I mean, I would think it'd be hard to fool me, but this one fooled me until I looked inside, because I really thought that was a solid wood top, especially from the sound of it. It sounds so good. So you should really pay attention to that. Of course, these days, the easy way to do it is just Google the model number and you're going to know. I know that, but you may not be where you can do that. And you might be, maybe you're out on the, back 40 somewhere and some guy says, hey, I got a guitar here, I'll sell you for $50. And you go, wow, $50, I'll take it. But at least you'll know what you're getting when you make those kinds of on the spur of the moment deals. So that's probably the main thing that you want to look at when you're looking at an instrument and knowing you're picking out good wood. Obviously for me, I prefer the quarter sawn. Now, not everybody does. A lot of people do prefer a slab sawn back and a slab sawn sides. They think that it actually has a woodier tone. I don't disagree with that. I kind of think it does have a tiny bit woodier tone on a slab sawn, a flat sawn, plain sawn, whatever the right word is that you want to use, because everybody uses a different word. But quarter sawn is where it's at for me. I like the quarter sawn look. I like the quarter sawn sound. I like the quarter sawn strength. It has a lot of strength. Corner sawed wood is definitely stronger than flat sawn wood. Evidence of that is, my dad had a landscaping business, and in the old days, we just had wooden boards for ramps, and the ones that had the grain like this were much stiffer than the ones that were flat sawn. You could drive your tractor up on those and it would barely sink at all. And if you got the flat sawn, you'd have a big sway in those boards as your tractor went up on the trailer. So, I mean, that's kind of a crazy example to use, but it proves my point of quarter sawn versus flat sawn. Quarter sawn is much stiffer. Here's another thing to know about plywood. Even though this guitar sounds good, and if this guitar sounds good and you don't have much to spend, then it doesn't matter. This would be an excellent choice. It's still not a bad choice, period, because it sounds good, But the point is, if you didn't have a lot of money, then a plywood guitar might be the choice for you. But here's some things to know about a plywood guitar if you decide to buy one, and that is that plywood, while it's incredibly strong on the rack, like this direction, it's incredibly strong. That's why they put it on the corners of buildings. That strengthens the building so that the building can't rack and sway. But it's not strong flat-wise. That's why ceiling or joists for floors and things are on 16-inch centers. You go any further than that and the plywood will sink really bad. And you can still hear plywood creaking and all that when you're walking on it because it's not terribly strong on the flat. Meaning that this isn't as strong as you think it is. Now it's strong in some ways and not so strong in others. It's not real super stiff, meaning that it can pull up and belly bulge probably easier than a solid quarter sawn piece of wood. And you might say, there's no way. Trust me, there is a way. This one here has a huge belly bulge from one side to the other. It's about 3/8 of an inch whenever you have the strings on it. And it's a solid plywood top, and it's not delaminated or anything like that. Plywood is not as strong as you think it is on the flat. It's crazy strong on the lateral. And maybe the strong isn't the right word because there's different ways to measure strength. Maybe stiffness is the right word. It's not as stiff as you think it is. You choose your word. I think you know what I'm trying to say. It bulges easier sometimes than real wood will bulge. So there you go. What else could I tell you about choosing a quality instrument? Obviously, your tuning keys and things like that. People get hung up on tuning keys a lot, and tuning keys are, as long as they turn smoothly and, they don't rattle and don't feel loose, you're probably doing fine with your tuning keys. If you get tuning keys that are loose and rattly and that sort of thing, well then you may want to go to the next. But in terms of that's about all you really need to worry about because tuning keys don't slip like people think they do. Most of the time slippage or perceived slippage is because people are not tuning up to the note. There's this nasty thing called backlash in all tuning keys. I don't care who makes them. Waverly even has it to some minor degree. While Waverly is about the least backlash tuning keys I've ever seen, even they have a tiny amount. So you always want to tune up to the note, never down to the note. As soon as you start to tune down to your note, you've introduced what they call backlash, and it will eventually pull that slack out, and you'll think your tuning keys are slipping. Everybody does that. Everybody says that. Just like everybody says when they see a label inside of a violin that they have a Stradivari. Trust me, how do I know? Just ask me. Anyway, that's about it, I think, that I wanted to cover on that. For my money, I just want to make this clear. For my money, I wouldn't give you 25 cents for all of these bridges that are adjustable with these knobs. I wouldn't give you 25 cents for all of these that you could pile in the back of a pickup truck. Now, this is not something to buy. If you can avoid this, avoid this. This hurts your sound more than just about anything that you can do to your instrument. Do not get the adjustable bridge on an acoustic. Now, on an electric, that's a totally different story. But on an acoustic, you don't want an adjustable bridge. I think that's about it. All right, let's go back to questions. Again, thank you, Bill, for that super chat. I really do appreciate it. Okay. Dee Dee says, Jerry, what came first for you? Love of playing mandolins or working on them? Well, I guess it was the playing, Dee Dee. I was really, really into archery. Kind of like I'm really, really into music now. But I was really into archery back in my teenage years. I was headed to the Olympics, had already gone through 3 qualifying events. My coach made me jump on a trampoline. You can still see the knot in this shoulder from it, right there, that big knot. Yeah, that ended my career in the archery. But I still hunted, and I competed a little bit. I even went back to a tournament when I was 36 and got third out of 300 shooters in a tournament that I hadn't even shot in a tournament in over 10 years. So I was a good shot with a bow. But once I had that accident, that knocked me out of the Olympics that were coming up. And so I started turning my attention toward music. So it was, my uncle had music in his, he had grown up with music, I guess you'd say, and he had a band called the Ozark Mountain Trio, Don Brown. And John Hartford, of all people, started in his band as well. John and Don and I know all the other guys' names, but right now, because I have to think of them, I can't think of them. But anyway, they were all just incredible musicians, and they were from in the 50s. So my uncle was considered to be the father of bluegrass music in Missouri. He was in the Tri-State Bluegrass Hall of Fame. He was the first inductee into that. Anyway, point being that I always liked music, and because I liked my Uncle Don and everything, I kind of got into the mandolin because that's what he played. So when I was about 27, 28, now that I was turning my focus from archery to the music thing, so I started by buying a real cheap little like a K-type mandolin. And I bought it like at Kmart, actually. And my uncle saw me playing it, and thought I was doing really good for only a month. But then he said those famous words to me. He said, son, for only playing that a month, you're really doing well. Probably as good as anybody I've ever heard. He says, but man, I can't hear you. You sound wimpy, and you need to learn how to play double notes. He turns around and he walks off. Now, he's my hero when it comes to music, And so that's all he said, and I took him totally literally. So I thought, well, I don't want to sound wimpy, and I don't want to, I want to be heard, and I guess I got to figure out how to play double notes. Man, I thought single notes was hard enough. What he meant was double notes for accent, but he didn't say that, and I didn't know enough at that point in my life. Being into it only a month, I didn't know nothing about it. I'm totally self-taught. I'm probably the most self-taught person you've ever seen in your whole life. It was like I learned. Oh boy, we're getting some spam going on here. Sorry, but there's a bunch of spam scrolling up the screen. Please just ignore it, or if you have the ability to cut that off, feel free. Anyway, so it was just like I learned to play the mandolin in a vacuum. I mean, like I was on a deserted island and there was nobody to ask or anything. That's how I learned to play it. I went back to my own house after he made those comments, and I didn't play in front of anybody for a solid year. And I thought, I got to figure this all out. Well, that's how I developed my own weird style of playing, where I play double notes all the time. And that's why Sam Bush, as you've heard me say, walked right up to me and goes, I ain't never seen anybody do it like that before. Which, it was good and bad. He wasn't knocking it, you understand. He was kind of like intrigued by it. And so anyway, it was funny. But I digress. That's how I got into playing. So then, of course, I wanted a better instrument. Well, when I start telling my Uncle Don about that I'm looking for a better instrument, he says, son, he says, I've played every mandolin in the country. They ain't none of them any good except for those Lloyd Loar mandolins from Gibson. Just get yourself a Lloyd Loar mandolin and be done with it. Sure, no problem. Just get a Lloyd Loar mandolin and be done with it. So I started, this was back in the 80s, you have to understand. And they were selling a lot cheaper back then than they are now. I mean, you could buy one for $6,000 to $8,000 quite often. Well, that was a lot of money in the 80s, and I didn't have $6,000 to $8,000. But I called all over the country and called every music store I could find in every state that I could think of, and keep in mind the internet wasn't around then, so it was hard to do. And finally, somebody put me on to Gruen guitar in Nashville. So I called George, and I talked to George on the phone, and he says, yeah, I do happen to have a Lloyd Loar in shop right now. And I said, well, how much do you want for it? Oh, I don't price them over the phone. I never do. I said, I'm in St. Louis. You won't even give me an idea? Because I got to drive 6. You'll have to just come down here and look at it if you're interested. Okay. So I got in the car, drove 6 hours, fully expecting to pay the upper end, the $8,000, is what I was fully expecting to pay. And hoping it wouldn't be that much, but knowing that it would be. Now, this mandolin, by the way, and I don't know who owns it now, but it was made on November 28th, 1924. Why do I remember that date? Because that's my birthday, only 30 years before me. It was made in 24, I was born in 54. So 30 years to the day, that mandolin basically had my name in it. So I thought, I have to own this. So I drove all the way down there, 6-hour drive, I think it was, or maybe more. And when I got there, I'm looking at it, and this thing was killer. It was a nice mandolin. And I'm going, yeah, I got to have this. How much do you want for it? $12,500. And he was firm on $12,500. Now, sure, knowing then what I know now, I'd have bought 2 dozen of them, I'd have mortgaged my house and my farm and everything else I own. But no, I couldn't afford $12,500. I couldn't afford $8,000, even though I was going to find some way to pay that. So anyway, I put my tail between my legs back to St. Louis, told my uncle about that, and I said, I'm just going to build my own. And he says, son, I've played every handmade mandolin in the country. They ain't none of them any good. Just get yourself a Lloyd Loar mandolin. Just keep looking around till you find one. Well, that was a lot of encouragement. So I thought, I'm going to show him. I'm going to build one, And so I built my first one. I was totally, absolutely 1,000% obsessed. OCD to the max that I was going to build a really fine mandolin. I didn't know nothing about building them. I bought that Semenoff book and I read it cover to cover 8 times. And not some people say, how do you know you read it 8? I read it cover to cover 8 times. And I know I did that because I was riding in a van pool and I read it cover to cover 8 times before I even went out and bought my wood or anything. I wanted to understand it as well as I could possibly understand it. Now, that was the original book. The new book's even bigger. I probably wouldn't have read that one 8 times. But anyway, so then I was totally obsessed, absolutely working day and night and to the wee hours of the morning and then getting up at 5 a.m. and going back to work. And, I was getting 2 or 3 hours of sleep a night for a solid month. I did that. But I got it built and I got it finished. And I heard my uncle was playing at a show over in Illinois somewhere. And by the way, PV Jan, thank you very kindly for that super chat. I appreciate it. But anyway, I heard he was playing, so I thought, I'm going to take this over there and show it to him, because I was pretty proud of it. It was crude by my standards today, but we still have the mandolin, and it's a nice sounding mandolin even today. It's a nice mandolin. There's nothing wrong with it, really. Not quite as looky as my other ones are, but it's pretty good. So anyway, I took it over there, and he was really well known in bluegrass. Trust me, he's kind of like Bill Monroe for Missouri, and people were just crowded around him, and waiting to get his autograph and talk to him and just tell him how much they liked his show, etc. So basically, I just kind of stood in line, waited to talk to him. So I walk up to him and I said, I wanted you to see my mandolin. He said, "Where'd you get that?" And I said, "I made it." He goes, "You made that?" He was like really surprised. And I said, "Yeah, I made it." So he starts picking around on it there and playing it. And he goes, he probably had it in his hand for 30 seconds, 45 seconds. Hands it back to me. He says, "Wow." He says, "That pick's really good." He says, "But it ain't got no chop." He just turn around, he's turning around, starts signing autographs and talking to other people, Tail between the legs again. I'm heading towards some folks I had seen jamming about, 50, 100 yards from there. So I meet up with them. We start standing there in our little circle. We were jamming there, and I kind of, the whole time, I kind of keep one eye on my uncle because he's still sitting back there at talking to these people. And all at once, just out of the blue, he stands up, and just like John Wayne, he's looking right at you like this, and he's just walking right at me. He walks that whole distance, like 50 yards or 60 yards, whatever it was. He says, "Son, I was wrong about that mandolin." I said, "What are you talking about?" He says, "Man," he says, "that thing's got a heck of a chop." He says, "I can hear that over everything around here." I felt a little better. But that's the story. I've told that before. I know some of you are probably bored hearing that a second time, but that's the true story of it. So from that point on then, I was roughly 28, 29 when that happened, approximately. No, well, let's see, 1983. Yeah, I was 29. I was 29 because 54 and 29, 83. There you go. So that's when I started my business, more or less. It was after people saw that mandolin, they would just, how they do, they just said, "Hey, I got this problem with my guitar. Do you think you could fix that?" And I'd look at it and I go, "Yeah, I think I can fix that." So I just take it. And that's how it blew up, It's just gone crazy ever since. All right, well, don't ask me questions like that unless you want the full answer. Sorry I went off on such a tangent there, but anyway, I'm trying to look and go back up to where we were. Bill Hyder has a super chat. Thank you. I probably said that. I don't know I'm a terrible reader. It takes me a while to figure out where I'm at, so just bear with me for a second. Wow, it scrolled quite a bit because I talked a long time. We're just about out of time, unfortunately. Michael Newman, I was wondering if you should always adjust the bridge. So, okay, that's where he was the one asking about the nut and the saddle adjustments. Talk about guitar humidifiers. Well, you've heard me get on that rant. I'm not going to go deep into it, but I just asked the simple question: why do you want to make your guitar wetter than the way it came from the factory? That's all I ask you, because it ain't going to get any drier than it came from the factory. And if you humidify it, you're going to make it wetter than it came from the factory. I guarantee it. And I know some of you don't believe that, but it's just a black and white fact. You can set any guitar out on a shelf in your house if you have a normally humidified house, a normally heated, air-conditioned house, and I guarantee you it's going to pick up moisture more than it's going to lose moisture. Guarantee you. I don't care if it's 50 years old, 100 years old, or whatever. So you don't need to humidify them if you keep them in a normal place. And I don't recommend humidifying your instrument unless you are in an extreme environment. The humidifier thing is a total marketing bunch of hype. Yes, I do know some companies recommend them too, but I think they're in bed with either the humidifying companies or the music stores or whatever, just to help them sell their products. They don't need to be humidified. In fact, people wonder why your instrument has the finish cracks. When an instrument sucks up moisture, it expands. I guarantee you that's what causes your cracks, because shrinking doesn't cause cracks. Expansion causes cracks like crazy because your finish, you have to understand, finishes get harder and harder every day. Every day they get a little bit harder. And eventually they get to the point where they don't expand. And when that wood expands, those finishes are going to crack. It's just that black and white, common sense, black and white, plain, straightforward, right in your face. You can believe what you want to. Feel free to believe otherwise. I have a guitar with a spruce bridge plate. Is this normal since it's quite soft? There are a lot of those out there. I don't like to see that. So you can do with it as you choose, but if it were me and if it was a decent guitar and you like the sound of the guitar, you like everything else about the guitar, and you wanted to improve it by putting a good solid rosewood, Padauk, bridge plate in there, like Martin and, even maybe Gibson is doing some now, you'll be better off. So do what you want. But I would change it if you could change it reasonably. Some things are just not reasonable, and that may be one of them. I'd have to see the instrument, because some instruments you just don't want to mess with stuff like that. What came? Okay, that was the question about what came first. So I missed some of those other questions ahead of time, I guess. I'm sorry about that. Rick Curtis, what brand and model digital calipers do you use? Thanks a lot. I'm glad you asked that, because I do like eye gauging tools. They're a little bit more expensive, but they're nowhere near the Brown and Sharp or the Starrett. All those are on the or Mitutoyo. Those are really high-end products, and those really cost a lot of money. These eye gauging are somewhere in the happy medium. And eye gauging, I don't know if you can see the emblem there, if it's going to focus on that or not. Kind of looks like it's focusing. Eye gauging. Anyway, those good quality machinist tools. Any of the tools that are made by eye gauging are good tools. I bought several, actually, and they're really good. I like them. And now we're out of focus because I got too close there or something, and I don't know how long that thing takes to focus. Looks like it just fixed itself, I hope. Okay, moving on. Larry T., what file would you recommend when making a fret leveling tool? Yes, I've covered this before, but it's good information. So I'm going to look here and see if I can find it. You'll see a lot of 6-inch bastard files. That's what the name of it is. Being an adult now, don't... That's what they're called, 6-inch bastard file. And right here, this one says Nicholson. If you can get the Nicholson, you're probably better off, or another name brand, versus the Chinese knockoff stuff. This one's more of the Chinese knockoff variety. There's actually no branding on this one. They look pretty much the same. The difference here is you can see this one gets narrower at the top, this one stayed square. You could use this one, but it won't last near as long as this one will. The thing that people don't know about these files is if you look down them, every one of them has a very slight curve to it. It's so slight that 90% of the people probably couldn't see it even if they're looking for it. It's really slight. But slight is 1/1000th or 2 of inches. That makes a lot of difference when you're leveling frets. 1/1000th of an inch high on a fret can be the difference between buzzing and not buzzing. Ask me how I know. I trust me when I tell you that. I'm not exaggerating that fact. It's a black and white fact. So that's why it's absolutely, completely 1000% critical. I can't stress it enough that you put this on your block the right way. This one, this is the concave side. It's curved like this. If I'm, trying to explain it, this is curved this way. It's not nearly that much of a curve. It's so minor that you can barely tell it, but this is the rounded part. This is the part you want touching your frets. You don't want this part touching your frets. It's going to mess you up. You got to get it on, and so you glue it to the block like this. Once you get it glued to the block, And I think we proved in the last one that I used JB Weld for this. Once you get it glued to the block, then you want to grind off this corner here. You want to round it off, and you want to round off this back edge here. And you probably have to go to a grinder to do that. But you want to get them rounded off, and then you can make this handle kind of ergonomic to you. This fits me pretty well. I just kind of monkeyed with it till I thought, well, that feels good, and that's how I made my handle. I just kind of monkeyed around with it till I thought it felt good. But boy, get it on the block the right way. That is the most critical part. You get it upside down, you're not going to be happy with it. Okay, moving on. I see that guitar has a bridge doctor in it. I don't think so. It might, I don't think so. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't have a bridge doctor. It does have a pin. This, by the way, while we're talking about how to select a good instrument, when you see these kind of dots, typically there are screws and bolts under those, and this one is definitely bolted down. Again, I can't hardly stress enough, you don't want bolts going through your bridge. You just don't want it. Trust me, why do you don't want it? There's a billion reasons. But mostly because some point in life, whenever you see, first of all, typically they're a lesser expensive instrument when you see that, number one. Typically that's true. Can't say it's true 100% because some of the Gibsons are that way, but I still don't want it. And in my opinion, it's a cheap instrument if it has it, whether it's an expensive Gibson or not. If it's got these little things like this, you can pretty much bet there's a bolt under there. Same way here, like if you see it on the edges, there's probably a bolt there. So look inside there, feel inside there, and see if there's a bolt there. Definitely there's a bolt there on this one. So why don't you want the bolt? Well, it's because if the bridge gives in any way, the bolt won't give and it will crack your top. It's just black and white guaranteed going to happen. So now it may not happen on a plywood guitar. It may not crack it because plywood's different, but on a real wood guitar, that kind of adjustable bridge is going to crack your top. So you don't want that. But no, that does not have a bridge doctor. Moving down here, PV Jan again, thank you for that super chat again. I don't know if I'm going to get through all these. We had a bunch of, spam there. Toby, it looks like he did it yet another super chat. If all that's true, thank you very much, Toby. Let's see. I'm probably missing somebody, and we're running out of time, so I'm going to try to cut this off quick. Did I ever think of buying Don's mandolin? Well, no, not really. After I started building my own and got good at it, I didn't have any desire to own one of those. Now, keep in mind, I took that 24 lower apart, and that's what I build mine off of. So, in effect, I basically got one like that. It won't have the value, but in my opinion, it's just like it. So I don't really have any desire to own a Lloyd Loar at this point. I'm not knocking them, you understand. They're great mandolins, but I have no desire to own one. I wouldn't play it if I owned one, probably. I'd be playing my own. I always said, what's the point in playing somebody else's mandolin? If I build them and build them to sell, why should I play somebody else's instrument? I should be playing my own. So that's the whole gist of it. Nothing trying to be smart or anything. It's just kind of one of those matter-of-fact things. Let's see. By the way, when they did sell Don's mandolin to Frank Ray of Cedar Hill, he was the one that purchased it from the estate. They called me and apologized to me that I wasn't, getting the mandolin or going to be. And I said, well, I didn't expect to get it. I didn't have any expectations whatsoever to get that mandolin. So it didn't bother me at all that it was sold. Ask Emery to sing. Yeah, we need to do that. I'm going to just call that good for now, guys. If I missed your question, I apologize. I hope you got something out of today's shop talk. If you got anything at all, how about a thumbs up? I would really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed by now, shame on you. I hope you would subscribe. It all helps perpetuate everything, helps me make a living. I mean, I'm just, you know me, I'm honest about everything. I don't sugarcoat nothing like a lot of these guys do. I just tell you like it is. It helps me make a living. So do what you can to help me. I appreciate it, and I'll help you as much as I can too. We'll see you probably Monday, if not sooner. There'll probably be another video coming out yet